Hey, church family, I wanted to take this opportunity to present you with another word of encouragement as we continue to pray for the recovery of our country. Now, it was last Tuesday when I briefly mentioned some significant data that the CDC recently revealed. According to their research, 94% of those who have died with COVID-19, well, they already had underlying medical conditions known as comorbidities, and most of them actually had multimorbidities, which kept them from recovering from the virus. What this also means then is that a young, healthy person is 1,000 times less likely to die from COVID-19 than the elderly person who already has multiple morbidities. And those between the ages of 20 and 40, well, they're 100 times less likely to die from this virus. And while it's true that this virus presents little to no risk for those who are young and healthy, it's also true that the case counts that ended up driving our country to the brink of economic ruin, these case counts have actually been over-amplified. If you don't believe me, I direct your attention to a recent article found in the New York Times. You see, it was last week when the New York Times ran this article that they titled, "Your Coronavirus Test is Positive, Maybe It Shouldn't Be." The author of this article, they inform us of the fact that the standard tests are diagnosing huge numbers of people who may be carrying relatively insignificant amounts of the virus. As a result of this, listen, upwards of 90% of those who test positive aren't actually contagious. Now, in order to understand this issue, it'll help us to know that the standard tests that are being used for identifying those who are infected, they go through a series of amplification cycles as the genetic material from the swab sample is analyzed. Those who have infectious levels of the virus, well, this is discovered after just a few amplification cycles. And while you would think that the rest of the samples would then be listed as negative, well, you'd be wrong. The samples continue to be tested for the virus as the process continues to amplify the genetic material upwards of 40 times. And after the swab sample has been amplified by 40 times, those who have an insignificant amount of the virus are still identified as being a positive carrier of the virus, though they aren't actually contagious. According to one expert, any test with a cycle threshold above 35 is too sensitive. As a matter of fact, a virologist at the University of California named Juliet Morrison, she confirms this by declaring, "I'm shocked that people would think that 40 could represent a positive." An epidemiologist at the Harvard School of Public Health also insisted that he would set the figure at 30 cycles or even less. And the reason why is because those with an infectious viral load, well, they would have already produced a positive result before it even got to 30 cycles. Now, it's important to note that there have been more than 83 million tests for COVID-19 here in our country. And of those 83 million tests, there are somewhere around 6 million that have come back positive for the virus. And with that being the case, we must ask, how many of those swab samples ended up testing positive, but only after 30 amplification cycles? Well, according to the recent research, anywhere between 70 and 90% of the confirmed cases on record were actually false positives that were produced by an over-amplification of the genetic material. Now, this is great news, actually, because listen, if the confirmed case count is actually 70 to 90% less than what has been published, then there's actually no reason for our leaders to continue destroying the economy of our country with endless lockdowns. An infectious disease expert from the University of Edinburgh confirmed this by declaring, "Lockdown was a panic measure, and I believe history will say trying to control COVID-19 through lockdown was a monumental mistake on a global scale. The cure was worse than the disease." Christian, listen, we now know that the case count has been distorted with over-amplified testing procedures. And we also know who ought to continue to self-quarantine in order to avoid the risk of infection. And while we should continue to pray for those who are still at risk of the infection, those of us who are young and healthy, we should push past the fear of this virus. And we should do this by trusting that the Lord has actually designed us and created us with an incredible capacity for overcoming viruses like COVID-19. And with that being the case, I invite you to join us here at Calvary South Austin as we continue to worship our Creator with our corporate worship services. Join us as we continue to make our way through the Gospel of Luke. And if you're still unable to attend, if you still feel the need to self-quarantine, COVID-19, well, then you can join us for the live stream of our second service every Sunday, as well as our midweek service Wednesdays at 7 p.m. If you'd like to know more about our service times and the measures that we're taking to sanitize our facilities, well, you can find all this information right here at calvarysouthaustin.com. I hope to see you soon, but until then, let's continue to fight the good fight of faith, all for the glory of God.